Is Lewis Hart for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store. I forged Irish Stout. Delighted today to be joined with James Frewin. We're in Dublin. It's nice and rainy, but there will be a storm on Friday night. The PFL back there for a big championship event. Other than that, how's things been, mate? How are we feeling?
Everything's good. We could not be more excited for this moment. It's been an incredible first season for the PFL in Europe, and Dublin is an incredible home for our championship. So there's amazing energy in the hotel, amazing energy around our first event in Ireland, and yeah, we could not be more excited, to be honest.
Absolutely. Before we do get into the fights, we do have to talk about the atmosphere. We were just talking off camera there about what it's like. Not even just MMA, but boxing in general. Like there's no one gets behind their own like the Irish in sports. So for a first event, I bet you're excited for that atmosphere and what it's going to be like on Friday night.
Yeah, the Fighting Irish is a thing, right? And
Yeah.
as I said, I think for us, we wanted to respect, with our first championship event in PFL Europe, we wanted to respect the role Dublin and Ireland has played in the development and the growth of mixed martial arts across Europe and around the world over the last 10 years, right? So it made total sense. And obviously you see events like Katie Taylor last week, which obviously, is in the boxing ring, but it's the same principle. It was amazing to see what she managed to achieve. And then, as I say, going back, the atmospheres in the three arena, over the last 10 years, whether it's MMA or boxing, has been incredible. So we can't wait to bring our own version of that, right? And I think if you look at our card and you look at the way we structure things, the way we do things at the PFL, with every single fight meaning something, including two Irish lads going for $100,000 and a European title. It's going to be a wild night from start to finish.
Absolutely. What are you really looking out for this card on Friday night? I know we see obviously not one Nate Kelly, but you've got two Nate Kellys on there. Dominic Woodings coming back from an injury. Simeon Powell back out. Brett Johns. Tom Breeze as well. I can list off so many names, but what are we expecting for Friday night?
Well, look, I think that's the beauty of this. It's a celebration of European MMA, right? And it's the start of a new era in combat sports as well, because as I say, the way we do things with our season means, number one, the culmination of a long season for the likes of Simeon, Dakota, John Mitchell, Franz Malambo. These are four names going for life-changing money and a life-changing opportunity to become European champion and then potentially move up into world challenger contention, right? So I think first and foremost, this is the culmination of a long season, and there are four big title fights on the card. So that's number one. But number two, I think the way we've got, an amateur in young Nate Kelly, starting off on his career, that's something that's pretty unique to the way PFL do things. You guys come from boxing. We've been working with Muhammad Ali's grandson recently over at PFL in the US, and he's gone on an incredible journey as an amateur, moving into his professional career, hopefully soon. So bringing that new type of energy into what is effectively a global platform with a young guy like Nate is also pretty unique. So we're pretty excited to see him really launch his career. And then looking around the card, you've got a bit of everything. And someone like Nate Kelly, who, is an 8-2, 8-fight win streak, young, 24, 25-year-old Irish athlete headlining the three arena at a relatively early stage of his career. I mean, as an Irish fan, what more do you want to see, right? You've got a lot there. And as you mentioned, there's some really kind of top names from Europe. So, there isn't a top, main event fight right at the top of the card in the traditional sense, but there is no weak moment on that card, which I think is really unique to what PFL bring.
Absolutely. One fighter I did want to touch on, and he's definitely made a storm. I mean, people knew him before the PFL for what he'd done on the regional scene, but he's definitely made a storm this year. Is Lewis McGrillen? He definitely sort of. And people have a lot of opinions on him, and he's definitely in for a tough fight against Wesley Meyer on Friday. So you're excited to sort of see him back out and face a guy who's definitely going to come to win.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Dan Hardy has, been a stroke of genius putting that fight together. It's a real test for Lewis. Maya's seen it all, but it's a fight where no one's going to back down. So that is a highlight. And Lewis has, been producing highlight reels from the amateurs all the way through to the start of his professional career. And he's competed multiple times this year for us. He is, or there is no doubt that he is, one of the very, very top rising stars in European MMA right now. And he's got all the attributes that the PFL see to go on to be a world champion.
As 2023 draws to a close, how would you look at this year for the PFL and PFL Europe? How would you sort of look at the progression it's had this year?
Yeah, look, the vision that Don Davis, our chairman and founder, and Pete Murray, the CEO of PFL, the vision that they've had to create a brand new league in a very, very short period of time and become what is now effectively a co-leader in the sport, a global MMA powerhouse with the acquisition of Bellator. It's incredible. And the last 24 months have been a really, really steep rise across the board. Whether you look at the success of the World Championship that we had just last week in the US and how that season and that sports season format's really shining through for both the US and the global sports fan. The TV ratings have been unbelievable. And then the launch of these leagues around the world. Again, our vision is to professionalize, advance, and grow this sport, right? Organizing it more effectively so fans get more of what they want, fighters get more of what they want, right? Which is to fight regularly, get paid well, and also be rewarded based on performance, not based on the opinion of a promoter, right? So again, you guys are, at the heart of the boxing world, but our vision is to create something completely new and innovative. And it's been a crazy ride the last few years, especially. And as I say, testament to Don and Pete, and then obviously the athletes. The athletes are at the core of everything we do. And what I love about Friday is that you've got 13 fights, and every single athlete on that card gets to compete on a global platform and take their place in the PFL ecosystem in some shape or form. Every single fight matters. And I don't know any other promoter where they're putting fights on like that.
Absolutely. And when you look at 2024 now, in such an exciting time for the PFL, with what you've just previously mentioned there, it must be exciting. You've got so much potential ahead. We'll get into sort of all the other stuff in a minute, but when you look at 2024 pushing it as a brand and as you want to expand, with what you've done so much in 2023, it must be exciting what 2024 has in store.
Yeah, definitely. The 2024, we'll be launching the league in the Middle East. We'll also be launching PFL pay-per-view super fights. And obviously there's some big names that have already been signed. And I can tell you there's some big names that the team are working on making happen as well, right? So watch this space. Don and Pete have been very open about the fact that Francis Ngannou will fight in the PFL Smart Cage in 2024. So, Jake's got a mission. He's on a mission with his boxing right now, but we built a smart cage in his facility not very long ago, and he's training hard and getting ready for that. So again, I think really the vision is to make sure that we're playing our role regionally. We're going to be playing our role globally with world titles. And then we're also going to be having the very, very best in combat sports competing in the PFL pay-per-view super fight division. And, Jake and Francis, no secret, but we've also signed Savannah Marshall, Claressa Shields. And as I say, I think you can see the direction of travel 2024 will be even bigger. And there's going to be some even bigger stars involved.
So it feels right to sort of touch on the big stars you've mentioned there, especially this year. So obviously Claressa Shields has competed in PFL before, but we do see the sign of Savannah Marshall. I will sort of just touch on that firstly. They've had one fight in the amateurs, they've had one fight in the pros. Does it feel right that the third fight will then be in sort of the smart cage in MMA?
Look, I think that's definitely the fight to make down the line. But Savannah's, training with Tom Aspinall and his team at Team Renegade down in Birmingham or up in Birmingham. And those guys are embracing Savannah. She's going on that journey, and she's excited about the idea of going after a world title in mixed martial arts. So she's getting at it, and Claressa has obviously been training, I think, for a couple of years more, but they're on a collision course to compete in the PFL Smart Cage. I'd imagine that they'll both compete in the Smart Cage at least once or twice before they meet, but that moment will be a big one.
Also, another sort of crossover fight I did want to ask about. Ngannou's making big waves in boxing as well, but obviously we do know his roots are in MMA. We did see a video of Deontay Wilder sort of trying on the gloves, looking at sort of the PFL gloves. How sort of massive do you feel like that could be as a fight in MMA? Seeing Wilder, who's obviously we know how hard he hits, and imagine that in 4 ounces.
Yeah, 4-ounce gloves with those two in a Smart Cage. That would just be something out of another world, right? So yeah, if that's possible to make happen, I'm sure Pete and Dom will do everything to make it happen for the fans and for those two guys who I think again are two unique individuals that are looking to leave real legacy in combat, and they've achieved so much in their respective sports. It would just be an unbelievable thing to bring those two together, as you say, in 4-ounce gloves in a cage. It would have to be hybrid rules though, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that'd definitely be something interesting for sure. When you see the signings of Amanda Serrano, Savannah Marshall, Claressa Shields, Jake Paul as well, we usually do see MMA fighters transition into boxing. Conor McGregor, for an example, and Ngannou, another example. What do you feel like is the law for boxers wanting to go to MMA and try something different there?
Look, it's true to say that very or less have done it that way, but I think as the sport evolves, as you get more of a professional environment, you've got unbelievable gyms, right? These athletes are unbelievable athletes in boxing and MMA, and actually the skills are really transferable. It's just if you listen to Dan Hardy, he'll tell you that it does take time with certain aspects and disciplines of mixed martial arts like jiu-jitsu and others, but you take a look at Savannah's taken it like a duck to water, right? She's loving every second of it. She's training hard in every single aspect of mixed martial arts, and it's not taking long, I can tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll talk. I was mentioning that previously about sort of business side of the PFL. It weren't sort of the world's worst kept secret in a way, with the PFL being interested in buying Bellator. There was the acquisition a couple of weeks ago now, a week ago now. How massive do you feel like this acquisition is for MMA, for the PFL to buy Bellator? And talking about the further expansion, how big do you think that could be?
Look, I think for the PFL, it wasn't. First and foremost, it's a massive moment, right? Like it really is. It's great for everybody, the fans, the fighters. It's new energy. It's new investment. It wasn't something that the PFL needed to do in order to become successful. We already are. We will be even more successful as time goes on with all of the things we're doing and the investments that we make. However, I think it does accelerate that growth, right? And it's no secret that Bellator have an unbelievable roster of talent, especially at the very top in terms of their world champions and the athletes that are in world title contention. And that's something that was going to be important for the PFL to be investing in anyway. So Don and Pete saw the opportunity and took it, and this is great for everyone because the PFL is going to become, or is already, the co-leader in the sport, right? And with Bellator, there is no doubt about that. And with Bellator and PFL coming together, it's a true powerhouse. So we can't wait. We can't wait to make an announcement on that very soon for 2024 in terms of Bellator. But it's going to have real purpose. It's going to have more meaning, and we're going to breathe new life and reimagine the product, which ultimately will sit and complement everything we do on the PFL side with our unique format.
Definitely. And you look at the European fighters that Bellator have as well. It must be exciting to potentially bring them over towards sort of the PFL as well when you see the events they've done.
Yeah, like Ray Sefo, our president of fighter operations, and Dan Hardy, and that whole team are an unbelievable team. They put together such strong cards, and now they have more assets to work with. And I think especially in Europe, you've got some unbelievable talent there that again are either champions or in title contention. So I think for the European fan, it's particularly exciting, and I think you'll hear very soon that we'll be will be bringing events to Europe for next year.
Absolutely. You mentioned there about being the co-leaders in MMA. These comments did get alluded. These comments got brought up to Dana White, who's obviously the president of the UFC. He didn't really mince his words on what he thought. I'm sure you sort of saw what he said. What did you sort of make of those comments that he came out of, and what did you sort of make out of what he said?
Look, I think competition is important in anything you do in business and life, right? And it's what keeps sports or businesses advancing and growing, and really that's all I'd have to say on that, right? Competition is good for everyone. It improves the products, and it's exciting for the fans.
But when you look at it, is it important? Do you sort of, when everyone looks at MMA, they'd always look at the UFC, but do you feel like in a way that we don't want to be compared to the UFC? We want to grow our own brand and be as big as, doesn't matter what the UFC do. We want to focus on ourselves.
Yeah, I think again, I always would fall back to Don and Pete's vision to reimagine and grow this sport, right? And again, they never intended the PFL to be a copycat product of the UFC or Bellator or even boxing, right? They all follow the same format. In our world, you put multiple fighters in a weight division, they compete multiple times, and they sort it out between themselves, right? So again, it's a different concept, it's a different format, and the PFL prioritizes true sports values and meritocracy, and that's really, really important when you think about sport. Why is it that the EPL, the NBA, the NFL, the Rugby Premiership, they all follow a similar format? Why does that not apply to combat, is my question.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because
we're answering it.
Yeah, definitely, because I suppose it is interesting what you say, because also what else you were saying there was Tom Aspinall was on TalkSport, and he sort of mentioned, he talked about, obviously in my world, in the boxing world, about the business, and he sort of spoke about, you've got 8 fights or 10 fights, and most of the card you do know who all the winners are. And I suppose with what you're saying there, so when you look at that and you look at the model that potentially how MMA is different to boxing, in the sense where MMA, you sort of, there a lot of the fights are all pick 'em fights. You might have a favorite, but you sort of, is that, do you look at the sort of the business model of boxing and see how it can improve, where we want to we do want to see more 50-50 fights on the cards?
100%. And as I said earlier, this is the start of a new era in combat, not just MMA, right? Because I think it's really, really important to the fan as well to really start to have the opportunity to believe what they're getting served up is true, right? There's been problems in boxing. There has been for a long time, and ultimately that comes down to how you organize and structure the sport, right? And I think that's why now our format is really starting to shine through. We've got data that we have more cricket and rugby fans coming in and watching PFL on a platform than they would go and watch UFC. Why is that? Is because the way we market and promote our product is the same way, in the same language, with the same tone as you would normally get served up. Chelsea play West Ham tomorrow, right? But next week they go away to, so you always know what's coming next, right? That's how you become invested. That's how you become passionate about a sport. And don't get me wrong, we all love the big boxing fights. But I'll be honest, as a boxing fan, I've grown a little bit tired of these long, hard, drawn out cards that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Do you feel like where we have the rise of MMA and we see the rise of the competition, you'll go to a PFL card and you might not always know who the winner is, and you'll see MMA, you might not always know who the winner is. Fans are sick. Do you feel like fans are, when they see that model, they're sick of the boxing model in a way, because of what we mentioned there? The fans end up getting impatient, which then forces guys like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to sort of start making more 50-50 fights.
Look, as a fan, all I want is for the big fights to get made. As a boxing fan, I don't think they generally do. Yeah. On occasion they do. In my world, with MMA and the PFL, at least in the PFL, that on the whole, we as the promoter take that control out of our hands and we put it in the hands of the athlete. So those athletes are on a collision course, and the cream rises to the top, and that's what you have on Friday. You have real purpose, real meaning to every single fight. And if you're not fighting in one of those title fights, you're fighting to get into the season next year, either in Europe, either in the global $1 million season, or you're fighting for a contract like young Nate Kelly. And that, I think, is what's most exciting. And when those fans in that packed 3 arena come and feel that and understand that and buy into that storytelling, you know, they'll quickly become a true PFL fan very, very soon.
Absolutely. Just as we close this off, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. As we push towards 2024, if there's one maybe guy in the PFL Europe roster that people that you really think is going to make a breakout year next year, who do you believe that can be?
It's tough because there are so many great young athletes on the PFL roster. Dan Hardy, our you know, head of fighter operations for Europe, he's got such an expert eye, and next year's roster, which will be announced very soon, is incredibly strong. But I would have to say young Lewis McGrillen.
Yeah.
Because he's a highlight reel from the amateurs through to the pros. You know, he's been tested a couple of times now, and you know, he's shone through, and on Friday he has what is the ultimate test in his career so far, fighting Maya, and neither of those guys are going to back down. So I would strongly recommend your audience tune in for that fight, because as far as young aggressive mixed martial artists who have all the potential in the world to go to world level and beyond on our roster, I'd probably say it's young Lewis.
Absolutely, James. Thank you for taking time to speak to me. Really appreciate catching up with you, and definitely catch up soon, mate. All the best for Friday.
Take care, man.
Thanks,
man. Thank you, man.